The ashlight shelf was still smoking when we came back down onto it, and the sun was up, full and flat and gold, the kind of light that makes a battlefield look almost gentle from a distance. Up close it never does. The mining scaffolds were folded over like burnt matchsticks. The dust hadn't finished settling from the Korath run that had broken the Torvain line an hour before, and it hung there in the light, turning slowly, in no hurry at all. We weren't supposed to be fighting anyone. My fire team, 4 of us. Corporal Vance, Lance Corporal Ota, a kid named Petrosian who still had that boot camp shine on him, and me, had been on the shelf as liaison security for a survey team. 3 civilian engineers cataloging ore veins under a joint charter with the Torvain Mining Authority. It was supposed to be the easiest posting any of us had ever pulled. Sunlit rock, quiet compressors, the Torvain column running its own perimeter a half-click out, while our engineers walked their scanners over the ore seams. Nobody expected the Korath. They hit the mining scaffolds first, then swept the ridge in a pattern that told me they'd done this to other columns before ours, on other worlds, and knew exactly which structures to collapse to cut off a retreat. When the Korath hit the column, we weren't there to fight them. We were there to get our own people onto the shuttle, and gone. That part we did clean. 15 minutes, 3 engineers loaded, dust-off called. Through the whole evacuation I could hear the Torvain column working the far side of the ridge. Short bursts, disciplined, no wasted fire, the sound of a species that had built its survival on precision instead of numbers. I stayed an extra 2 minutes to do a sweep of the ridgeline, because that's what you do, and that's where I found her. She was propped against a slab of collapsed rockcrete, one leg folded under her at an angle a leg doesn't fold, both hands steady on a sidearm resting in her lap. Torvain are big, bigger than us, scaled the color of old brass, built low and dense through the shoulders for a gravity heavier than ours. She had the plating of a line sergeant, cracked down one side, and a wound low on her spine that had already told her everything she needed to know about her legs. She wasn't panicking, she wasn't even afraid, not the way I understood fear. She looked at me the way you look at weather, something that has already happened to you. Go, she said. Her voice came out through the translator flat, precise, the accent underneath it rough as gravel. Your column has already gone, go with them. I told her I wasn't Torvain, that I didn't have a column, that I had a fire team and a shuttle holding station 2 clicks out, and that she was coming with us. She said no. She said it the way you'd correct an error in a report. The 9th Ridge column did not carry the fallen. That was not cruelty, she told me. I remember that word specifically, cruelty. Like she'd anticipated I'd use it and wanted to head it off. It was arithmetic. A soldier who could not fight was a soldier who slowed the ones who could. The doctrine was older than her, older than the column, written into the Torvain military code, long before the compact ever charted this shelf. It had kept the Torvain alive through wars that would have buried a species with softer math. Wars where mercy toward the wounded had once cost entire lines their retreat corridor. She had made her peace with it long before I arrived. She recited it to me, the way I'd recite a general order, without heat, without self-pity, as though she were briefing a junior officer on a policy that had simply, correctly, come around to include her. The sidearm in her lap wasn't for the Korath, it was for her, if the Korath patrol came back before either of us did. I want to say I had some clever answer for that. I didn't. I just told her I wasn't leaving, and I sat down on the rock next to her, which probably violated 4 separate protocols, and told Ota over the comm to hold the shuttle and get Vance and Petrosian up to the ridge with the litter. She looked at me like I'd said something in a language even the translator couldn't touch. You will die for arithmetic that is not yours, she said. It's not arithmetic to me, I said. It's just you, sitting on a rock, and me, not leaving. She didn't have anything to say to that either, which I've come to think might have been the first time in her career that a superior officer's math had simply not applied to her. The Korath patrol came back 11 minutes later, 6 of them, sweeping the ridge for salvage and stragglers, and by then, Vance and Petrosian had the litter up, and Ota had the shuttle lifting off station to close the distance. 11 minutes doesn't sound like much, until you spend it lying flat behind a shattered scaffold beam, with a woman who cannot use her legs, feeding her spare magazines because her hands still worked fine, and her aim, even flat on a rock with her spine screaming, was better than mine. She called ranges to us in that same flat translator voice, no different than if she'd been reading them off a scope readout in a training exercise, and it steadied all four of us more than anything I could have said. Petrosian took a graze along the forearm that he didn't mention until it was over. Vance broke 2 Korath rifles with a rock because he'd run his own dry, and swore about it afterward like a man complaining about a jammed printer. Ota brought the shuttle in low along the scaffold line to give us a wall of dust and noise to work behind, and held it there under fire longer than any flight manual would have recommended. It wasn't clean. It wasn't heroic in the way the word gets used in briefings afterward. It was 4 humans and 1 Torvain sergeant, none of whom had any real business surviving that ridge, refusing, together, to let a plateau full of raiders decide who got to keep breathing. When the last of the Korath pulled back toward the scaffolds, the sun hadn't moved much at all. It felt like it should have. When the shuttle put down, Vance and I carried her up the ramp between us, and she held herself rigid the whole way, jaw set, because some part of her doctrine was still running, even as we broke it, telling her this shouldn't be happening, that being carried was a kind of debt she had no framework for repaying. I told her she didn't owe us anything. She didn't believe me. Not then. She spent 6 weeks in the aid station aboard our support ship, and for most of those 6 weeks, I came by after my shift, sat in the chair by her cot, and didn't say much, because there wasn't much that needed saying. Her legs came back, slowly, with the kind of stubbornness I recognized because I'd watched her use it on a rock under fire. Some evenings she'd work through the physical therapy long past, when the corpsman told her to stop, jaw set exactly the way it had been on the shuttle ramp, and I'd just sit there and hand her the next weight when she asked for it, without being asked twice. The Torvain liaison officer who visited twice a week never quite knew what to make of me being there. Neither for a while did she. I think for the first 2 weeks she expected me to stop coming, the way you'd expect a policy to eventually correct itself. When I kept showing up, she stopped asking why out loud, though I could tell the question hadn't gone anywhere. It had just moved somewhere quieter. The night before they cleared her to transfer back to a Torvain recovery facility, she asked me, flat, precise, the same voice from the ridge, why I had stayed. Not why I had come for her. Why, once she'd told me to go, I had sat down instead. I told her the truth, which was that, where I'm from, you don't leave people because the math says to. You leave people when there's nothing left of them to save, and there was plenty left of her. She was quiet a long time after that. Then she said that on the shelf, she had been prepared to die with her doctrine intact, and instead she was alive with it broken, and she still hadn't decided which one she owed more to. I told her she didn't have to decide that night. She's rebuilding a column now, on a world I'm not cleared to name in a report, training her own line sergeants on doctrine that looks, from what I hear, a little different than the one that left her on that rock. I don't know if that's because of me. I don't ask. But she still calms me, twice a year, no more, no less. And every time the message is the same 3 words, translated flat and precise, the way she says everything that matters to her. Still here, are you? I always answer the same way, still here,